Eleanor, I'm so sorry. I seem to have a problem here. I appear to be a cat. I don't know what. I think I pressed the wrong button. This is terrible. Oh,
Oh,
oh God. Eleanor, I think I'm not good with computers. Oh, that's much better. Oh, sorry about that.
oh,
I don't know what happened. Come on, guys. Haven't you always wanted to do that? Haven't you always wanted to show up as a cat on Zoom and just do that with hundreds of people actually on the call? Yeah, humans are pretty unpredictable, and it's actually relevant to what we're going to talk about today. I won't talk about my background in detail, other than to say that I think because I've been in a variety of roles, I've come to appreciate not only connecting the dots between how things like marketing, product sales all interrelate, right, and kind of developed a respect for what it's like to be on the other side of the fence. But for me, inspired by a pretty dark or challenging period in my life. I don't know if some of you have sort of been through something like this, where things like your parents passing away and like a job change and a long-term relationship ending and things like that all happening in a short period of time. When life sort of kicks you in the teeth a little bit, you take a step back, and not only do you sort of question your own mortality and your sort of place in life, but at least for me, it inspired me to kind of dig deeper and go down to what you might think of as core principles. And for me, I got into things like philosophy, and I got more and more curious about some of the sort of natural phenomenon and, kind of down at the base layer of reality. And that's all, it sounds very high-minded, but I think if you're curious, what happens is you start to see patterns, right? And so when you're working in roles in companies, you start to see patterns, you start to see some kind of what I think are universal truths that emerge more and more. And for me, I found that they're connected so deeply to the very foundations of sort of how reality works, cause and effect, things like the power of asymmetry in nature. That's the sort of natural world of cause and effect, and how we as humans, right, our evolutionary psychology still dominates so much of what we do, right? And so when you think about, you take it all the way up, back up into the strata, you think about, well, your customer is actually still the same sort of flawed, unpredictable, irrational human that might just sort of like turn on the a cat zoom filter for a talk like this. And it gives you an appreciation and I think a lens that when you spend so much time working up here in the strata, we're so busy in our jobs, we're like optimizing this cat campaign. I'm trying to eke out another 2% of my CAC LTV, right? We spend so much time there, and so much of that stuff is built from analogy, right? These are layers upon layers upon layers that we build up over time. And especially when you start your career, usually, and you don't know a lot, you're starting way up here in the strata. You're relying on the scaffolding that has been built that you sort of take by, assumption. And one of the benefits, I suppose, of being around a while and connecting the dots and then spending some time way down here in sort of base reality and getting into things like philosophy is that it's a little bit like waking up from the Matrix or something, right? It's a little bit like seeing the forest for the trees. And that's what I want to talk about today. And if there's one thing I hope that you could take away from today, um, most of us are looking for kind of a tactical quick hit. And it really, I think the place where I found the real magic to sort of come from is, sorry, I just will not mute here for a second, not the tactical quick hit, but actually the place where you can actually go down into the muck, if you will, and from that place find some fundamental things that are possibly disconnected and not working. And I'm lucky I get the chance now in recent years to work with a lot of different companies, especially companies at this sort of that 0 to 1 stage. I love that stage a lot, but also some later stages. And when I encounter business problems, very tactical, very in the weeds problems, sometimes people are stuck. They want to get unstuck in some way, or something that was working and stopped working. 9 times out of 10, I'm finding that the solution is actually way down here, way at the base layer, and very, very rarely up at the top. It's usually some sort of asymptotic gain that you might get up at the top. So if there's one thing I'm hoping you could take away from today is to spend even 5 minutes tonight or this weekend when you're quiet, no Netflix, turn off the music, and just think even for a few minutes about the deep interconnectedness of things, what you're doing in your work, your role, how your role relates to your end customer value that you're trying to get to. And I think you might be surprised about the things that emerge there. So looks like I'm sharing my screen here. I need to just close this thing here. Okay. Can you all see my screen, Demystifying Marketing? Raise your hand. Eleanor, can you help me out? Yeah?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can
Okay.
see it.
Okay. Great. Okay, good. So a lot of questions came through today, and there's no way we can cover all of them. What I tried to do with sort of the slides portion of this is hit on a couple kind of cornerstones that keep coming up, not only in the questions that I received in advance for today, but with companies that I work with and just peers of mine and conversations I've had over the years. There's so much confusion, number one, about marketing. Like, what is marketing? We oftentimes we think about marketing as it's somehow this weird magical secret sauce that there's some levitating wizard on a magic carpet sprinkling marketing dust, and it's like there's something sort of voodoo science. No, it couldn't be further from the truth. Marketing at its most fundamental level is really it's communication. And it's specifically, and this is sort of my definition of it, up in this sort of semantic layer of communicating the value of a product or service to hopefully the right audience at the right time and place to hopefully influence their perceptions, their behaviors, and then take some kind of action, right? It's about anticipating, identifying, satisfying their needs and desires. And the anticipating part of that is really, really key, right? You could think about so many analogies in history where if you ask someone before the car what they would want, they'd want a faster horse. Before the iPhone, they'd say, well, I'd like a Palm Trio, but with like a bigger screen and maybe I could touch it or something, right? So there's a lot of incredible, especially in the time we live now, there's a lot of anticipatory potential with combining both new and existing technologies into something new. And then finally, it's like you're performing a range of things, of tactics that are all in the service of initiating, reaching out to connecting with customers, building and then maintaining those relationships to drive some kind of outcome. Okay. Now, when we see things out there in the world, we see examples of brands, whether it's Apple, and we see things like this. Well, it's not a normal reaction for someone to get this excited as this guy is about a piece of metal and glass, right? And especially in later years, even more recent iPhones, people are still doing this, right? Is that marketing that produced that? It blows my mind actually that people still think that, well, Apple's just really good at marketing. Yeah, they're really just a marketing company. They're just, well, it's just, well, Apple, oh, marketing, right? That really kind of blows my mind, right? Is it marketing or is it something much, much more? Is it the sum total of lots of different things, right? Companies actually make great efforts to make clear what pain they solve, what delight they enable. Why would someone in the era of generics still buy Advil? Is there some trust involved? Are there other deeper psychological factors involved? And then you have things like this. I can't even read the font, right? It says, but it says Cybertruck. Why do you know that, right? How is it possible that you see something like this and have a very visceral reaction to it? Is that because of some just marketing? Is it PLG, right? What sort of semantic label do we put on something like this? Or is it really like, wow, it's wrapped up in some combinatorial sum total of Elon, and look at the hard lines on that, and it's very aggressive looking, and there's this controversy. I can't help but think about Twitter and maybe Tucker Carlson. I'm not sure. It's all in my head. Yeah, right. Now there's ChatGPT. Well, was that product-led growth? Was it something else? Was it more? So even something like in B2B, you think, well, Slack. Well, when Slack first sort of got popular and got out there, they started running ads like this, right? Say, well, yeah, you do like a lot less email, make me more efficient, save me time. Of course, most of us didn't find that it ended up saving time. It just basically changed how you worked, right? But was it marketing? Was it product? Was it some combination? So the point is that the actual experience that our customers have, right, and that we together with our teams end up providing in sum total from your company is this combination of different factors that all ultimately touch people's lizard brains in some way. Or at a minimum, you get the rational parts of the product. So someone may see your communications online, they may see, ads, they may see what the founder is saying. We live now in the era where people are really becoming the brand. So what someone from your company says online or does, or what they signal, incredibly important. Ultimately, it is our lizard brains, and this is the oldest part of our evolutionary makeup, right? This is the sort of animalistic taste, smell of things that sort of make us often do irrational things, right? Even in the face of clear data, right? You can give someone all the data about what food is good for you or not. But when you crave that certain food, when you walk by something that has certain colors that make you sort of salivate in some way, right? Or why is smell so powerful? When you smell a certain smell that you've been smelled since your childhood, and it literally transports you, takes you all the way back there. What's going on there? Well, it turns out that the same people that we are selling to, right, that we're trying to compel about our products and services in the year 2024, in the era of ChatGPT and Claude and the Cybertruck and all that stuff, these are these same ancient evolutionary brains that are parsing all of this and ultimately making an animalistic, very human, and often very flawed decision, right? Yet we think that people react rationally. We'd like to think people will take the data about our products and they'll compare and they'll say, well, clearly this product has this and this has this, right? But the truth couldn't be more different. And this is just one example of the fact that, there are so many different factors that go in to how someone thinks about your brand, your product, your service, and yet we get hung up on these semantics. Now, taste. What about taste? Well, taste really matters, and taste is also one of those things that ultimately is informed by the oldest parts of our brain, right? Our lizard brains. Things we just we don't know why we like something or don't like something. Something rubs us the wrong way, right? Well, taste actually really, really matters. And taste doesn't have to mean some sort of rarefied, sophisticated thing. No, everybody has taste. Everybody in the world has some taste. They know intrinsically and deeply and at an animalistic level what they like or don't like. Now, in our AI-fueled commoditization of content world, right, where channels are ubiquitous, right? Everybody has instant access in their pocket, always on, all the time. It's getting even more that way. The value of content itself goes to zero, right? People are becoming the new brands. Well, why is that? It's because taste is the most sort of human of our ways of interpreting these things and making a decision. And so it's no wonder that people, right, and taste become ultimately the most valuable things, or certainly among the most valuable parts of what we can do with our products and services. Now, let's go back up into the strata here. Unfortunately, this is what our orgs often look like, right? So, this graphic is generous in the fact that there's even overlap between, say, product, marketing, sales, customer success, et cetera, product marketing, right? But in reality, again, down at the base layer of reality, these semantic lines don't exist. There's just your company. There's just a lot of people doing things. And all those things ultimately need to work together, along with a lot of things that just happen out there in the real world, including things that people from your company might do or say, other things that people will experience in the world. All those things ultimately shape the net customer value or customer perception that you'll have. Yet here's how we're trying to run our orgs. Now, right? And so that's tricky. So what if you can blur the lines, right? Why would you blur the lines? Well, it's because the lines don't really exist again. There's that scene from the old Matrix movie where, Neo is sort of asked to try to bend the spoon. And of course, if he tries to do that up here in the strata, you can't do that in that way, you really need to bend your perception and realize that there actually is no spoon. So there are no lines, right? But your customer needs are real. So number one, unlearn those semantic lines. This is sort of the first step sort of down this rabbit hole, going from the strata downward, right, into base reality that'll get you closer to your customer. So all these things, product marketing, brand growth comms, they're all in service of delivering this net customer experience, value, and outcome. Okay. Your internal org structure are labels, your teams, whether like you've got growth sitting here next to product and stuff like that. I can't tell you how many questions I get all the time, including today, around people who are so bent around the axle about, well, I just don't understand because this thing is, I'm here in this role, but product is here. So, but is there overlap? Like, should I be spending time on this when the marketing person is here? Imagine that your customer is over here waiting for value, right? Your CEO, hopefully, your founders, your leadership needs you all to work together to deliver, hopefully, that net customer value. Yet we set up our orgs in these ways, and we set up, in worst cases, silos and fiefdoms, right? And your customer doesn't care about your fiefdoms, right? They want value. So this is just a starting point, tip of the iceberg, ways to focus and get back to customer delight, right? So you got to get out of your own way, right? So do a work back. Start by the simplest thing you can do with your team and hopefully as a company, cross teams, is do a simple work back exercise where you've got net value on one side and your net customer experience, right? Literally plot the steps, take some examples of what customers experience all the way through from first touch. Now, you might say, well, we're already kind of doing that. We understand from first touch here. They may then follow up and go to our website. We can track them here. We did this. And no. I'm talking about do your best to find the combinatorial sum total of what real customers experience. So talk to your customers. Go and find out how did they go through and find your product experience? What are the other touch points? Was there something completely unrelated? And how are you speaking to them? Are you speaking their language? Okay. Now, a way to start to do this is cross-functional teams. Well, a lot of us think that we have cross-functional meetings. What happens when you have that weekly product and marketing cross-functional team meeting, right? Or sales and marketing as their meeting, right? Oftentimes, unfortunately, it's here's what we're doing from our fiefdom. Now we're going to hear what you're doing in your fiefdom, and where you're sharing basically your schedules forward, and you're maybe at best looking for points of overlap or problems, okay? That's not deep collaboration. By contrast, Apple, especially a while back, their secret sauce, or one of the elements that made them great with products and marketing, is they would have deeply cross-functional meetings where you had stakeholders from literally every possible department, right? One person who is basically a responsible individual from the get-go, from inception with ideas, and they would ideate and tear things up and go back and forth and identify, oh, if you do this on the product side, this feature, we can actually talk about it in this way, kind of on the website and marketing side, and so on and so forth. So it's really, really powerful when you do this. And I can tell you, as an N of one, working with companies even very recently, when you even take baby steps in this direction, the results can be absolutely mind-boggling. You will reveal things that you didn't know were possible for your customer. You will remove roadblocks, and it's really powerful. Now, a challenge though is leadership. You need leadership to sort of buy into this, right? And I think what you can do as a first step is to make sure that if you're hearing things like, that's not my job, right? Oh, that's a marketing thing. Oh, no, that's the product team. No, that's not marketing, right? Or no, that's more the sales team. You hear that not my job, not invented here. That sort of thing is really, really dangerous in companies. And unfortunately, in some organizations, you hear that a lot. In healthy teams, you hear less of that. Let me cite an example. Back in my days at Udemy in the early days, I tell you, we were lucky to have, I would say, a lot of real 10Xers, people who deeply cared, who were self-starters. And it was so refreshing and eye-opening to see how people would basically just take matters into their own hands, right? And they would work together and even come up with their own little mini strike team goals, their own AKRs, certain own OKRs, and they would basically go to leadership and say, hey, we want to do this. We think this is important, right? And here's actually a metric that we can cite. You know, you had people doing that kind of thing. By contrast, you can take another company, and it couldn't have been more a matter of, you know, fiefdom. So marketing was terrified of looking bad. And so they was sort of the, well, hey, we delivered X number of MQLs, and look, these SALs here, well, you accepted them, so they should be valid. And so you had so much of this turf protection and people pointing fingers, and those kind of things really, not only do they destroy companies, um, but they're really dangerous for employees on your teams, because when people do that, they may feel that they're protecting themselves temporarily by hiding behind some data and saying, well, we did our job, right? But ultimately, everybody fails, and then you fail as part of that. So this stuff is mission critical, and even taking baby steps can help a lot. So I would say take matters into your own hands. Go to your CEO, a great leader, you know, a great CEO, a great founder, a great person who is leading your team will actually see bold initiative, and they should love it. They should say, thank you. We need more of that, right? They want to be told what to do, right? They want self-starters. And so that's incredibly, incredibly important to blur the lines. Now, let's go a little bit deeper here. I will make the case again, like I said at the outset, that going deeper to root principles and deeply understanding not only your customer, but getting deeper into the basis of human psychology, understanding how, again, natural phenomena like the power of asymmetry. All right, we can speak for hours about this right now, but hopefully most of you know what I'm talking about when we say things like the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, how asymmetry exists in nature, how things like leverage, right, are so incredibly powerful if you deeply understand them. Spending time thinking about your business, your job, your team, and what you were trying to do this quarter, and then going down to root principles and saying, is there a disconnect here? Again, I think you will find more benefit there than trying to be stuck in your tool and think, well, if I just connected this tool to this thing and automated this with ChatGPT, right? We spend so much time now way up here in the strata when your biggest unlocks can be down here at the root, right? One great place to start that even for companies that have been around for a while, and this is really surprising, you would think that companies that have been around for a while would be super clear on the root, like their deepest DNA, right? Like, who are they? Like, what's your place in the world? Why do you exist? Who are you for? Right? Right? How are you better? Why should people care? Some may think of that as sort of the four P's, but I think it's deeper than the four P's. It's literally your reason for being in this world. You know, when Steve Jobs came back to Apple, famously, you know, you think about like, well, they did the Think Different campaign, and some people think it was sort of a rebrand, right? It's just a rebrand, and that was a really good marketing stunt. In reality, it was much, much deeper. He literally did this. He went back to the root and said, in a market like we have, what is Apple's place in this world? Why do we exist? Who are we for, right? And completely not only reframed their direction, but went back literally to first principles and said, we need to completely redo what we're doing and how we're doing it and what products we create from that. And so you might think, well, they they did this great campaign, this Think Different campaign, and that started this kind of this whole new wave, and it was all marketing led. In reality, what happened was they then proved it with the iMac. The iMac product, especially at that time, right? This is a long time ago, pre-iPhone, all of that, right? The notion of this colorful, like kind of outrageous looking computer was such a stark contrast to the beige boxes of the time that were focused on incrementally saying, well, this is 10 megahertz faster. And right, it was such a complete just about face and stood so different. And it had a direct line of purity to what Steve was talking about and to those fundamentals, right? It was a clear, I would say, the most natural expression as a product, right, of this new direction of who they were, of who they got back to. And that is, to me, a great example of the intersection of product, of knowing who you are in this world, of knowing how you can delight your customer in a new way in an incredibly impossible market, right? They were almost bankrupt, right? And then the marketing becomes the communication, the expression of that, but they're all integrated. So again, spend even 5 minutes thinking deeply, again, about who you are as a company, why, for whom, why you're better, why care, and then take that all the way into your role and what you're doing. How connected and how consistent and how congruent is what you're doing to that core? Okay. Spend a little time also on psychology. I mean, especially if you're in a marketing role, product marketing role, and if you're in product, um, and really and sales as well here. I mean, this is key. I wish someone had told me a long time ago to spend more time learning this stuff because again, most of us learn these things by analogy. We are building upon the scaffolding of all of the sort of things, the assumptions that we think are true, when in reality, unless you understand the base level and the fact that humans are intrinsically flawed, unpredictable, just like me doing the cat thing at the beginning. You really don't have an appreciation for what your customer might actually need, what they actually might care about, and what really motivates them to buy. Again, this to me probably is the other biggest unlock, is to map what you're doing to not only Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I mean, to me, that's actually a very simplistic and kind of not that helpful way of categorizing these things. I think it misses some of the layers that go even below that. But the point is, humans oftentimes will say or look like they want a certain thing. And there's like an example of where we had a certain target customer, and on the surface, it looked like that customer was all about X, right? They were sort of confident they needed this type of product, and these things were important to them. It turns out that upon deeper digging and talking to a lot of customers, spending time with them, many of them were kind of self-loathing. You're like, wait, what? They have a deep insecurity, and we would dig deeper and we would find why. Why is that? Why is that? Keep asking why. And when we sort of realized what really motivated them, it was something very, very different from what we thought. And we adjusted the way that we talked about our product. We adjusted what we focused on in the product, not just marketing, but at the product level, and mapped that all the way through to the marketing level. And it was a massive, massive, massive unlock over time. It took some time, but it really was a game changer. And we were able to build a flywheel for the customer and actually penetrate a market that at the time was already very, very crowded. And so, it's really powerful what you can do when you start to deeply understand your customer from an evolutionary perspective. So spend some time there. And then finally, just to touch on this, because the slide portion is going way too long here, leverage, right? Is there an asymmetrical advantage in the DNA of your company, right? Spend some time thinking about this, right? The notion to me, it really blows your mind. I love this that Archimedes, made this statement around, if I have a fulcrum and a lever long enough, I can move the world. Things like this that exist in nature are so powerful and in your DNA of your company, right? This is what Peter Thiel talks about when he says, ultimately, you want to be in a category of one. Are there some things you can do at your product level in the DNA of your company around how you're going to solve your customers' pain or delight that are indeed intrinsically asymmetrical, meaning that they can provide leverage? Are there some things you can do where it is so 10x better because you're completely reinterpreting the problem or the solution, right? We see a lot of companies coming out now, especially enabled by technology shifts that can do this, but it's not only new technology, it can often be just combining existing things, right? Again, you could take something like the iPhone and you could say that the combination of those things with some new technology in there produce something that had such outsized new potential that it seemed, like it was beamed from the future. So there are a lot of things you can do, even with your existing products, where you can spin them, you can augment them, you can change something that gives you some asymmetrical advantage at the core level. And the reason this is so important is because it's getting harder and harder to differentiate and sort of rise above the noise with sort of just marketing, with just content, right? With just blasting things out there. You need to have more than ever the deep integration between product, marketing, sales, and all of it being consistent in your DNA to then be able to get to that leverage, right? The leverage that something like the iMac had back in the day, right? So I one last thing here is I would say the 80-20 rule is one more of those things, right? A lot of companies I see, and I had a lot of questions on this. People are always trying to equalize everything, right? Now, this is a little bit controversial when you apply this socially and culturally, but the reality is in nature, you see Pareto distributions everywhere, right? Small number of inputs produce more of the outputs, right? So this core concept again can be utilized, and it is fine if you find out, say, one of your tactics or channels is vastly more powerful, right, in producing most of the results than others. That's not a bad thing. People all so much are trying to equalize and normalize everything and say, well, yeah, but we need to get our email marketing channel up because look, it's so low compared to X, Y, or Z. You know what? Yes, you can always eke out gains. You can always try to improve things. But the point is, when you find a channel, one or two channels that are working far better than others, double down on those, further maximize those. Don't try to sort of round out the things that aren't working as well. And in fact, you can get even bigger gains by divesting entirely in some of those things that are only producing kind of okay results than trying to think that you have to have some massive, multi-channel thing that's all working well. And I know that it's controversial, but I have found this to be a huge unlock as well. So to quickly summarize here, blur the lines, integrate your teams, and OKR people on the net customer value and business outcomes. Easier said than done, but again, great leadership will hopefully appreciate you're trying to do this and will help you and support you. Apply all the stuff we just talked about here around human behavior and the sort of foundational laws to what you're doing and to your target customer, right? You may find that when you go down deep, you might want to change a lot of things. In some cases, almost everything, especially if you're in that 0 to 1 stage and you're trying to test different ICPs and trying to find product market fit there. You should be comfortable being willing to change almost everything, okay? Get deep down into your most root DNA, like we talked about, and hone it. Spend time there. You'll get a far more benefit, I promise you, spending time down there than up here. And finally, spend some time understanding the sort of natural laws we talked about, and see how they can connect to your business. Okay, so I'm going to finally end there, Eleanor. Hopefully, we used about half the time for that, and let's open it up to your questions. Wow.
Yes.
Got some questions here.
Yes, we've got a few. Do you want to start? We're going to start with the most voted. Do you want to start with the first one, Paul? And I don't know if this person is
organized by
still...
upvoted. Great.
Yes.
Let's see here. Let's read it. Other than working more together with the marketing team, what are some ways PMs can level up in their marketing, their product better, or being more contributive, involved in the process? Right. In other words, what are the small habits or steps one can take? So let me make sure I understand the question. I'm not sure who asked the question. It's clearly around how can people in product managers do better with marketing. Is that the crux of the question? Perhaps the person who asked the question, would you mind actually kind of helping to clarify that, just so I can make sure I right size the answer? If you're willing to speak up.
Yes, I confirm. That's right. That's right. That's right, Paul.
Great. So, Nicholas, tell me a bit more about are you looking for ways that product marketers can or is this product marketers or product managers, how they can integrate marketing into the product better? Is that it or can you clarify?
Yeah. I'll give you perhaps a little bit of context. I'm a PM at an early stage startup.
Yep.
And we don't have a product marketeer. We only have and sorry for butchering this, I'll call her more of a brand marketeer. She's working more on the brand,
okay,
but not so much on the product. So there's kind of a cleavage there. There's kind of a gap, and I'm trying to bridge that gap. And so I'm looking for ways to help bridge that gap somehow, even though I'm not directly responsible, let's say, for marketing the products.
Got it. Got it. And she is, though, it sounds like, right? Is she basically a marketing manager of sorts?
Yes, that's right. I'm working more on
Taking
the
what you
overall
do.
branding.
Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha.
Correct.
How deeply are you collaborating with her? Meaning, in your PRDs, MRDs, et cetera, like, are you guys working together on as you're doing, feature roadmaps and getting feedback from customers? Is she involved in that currently?
Not enough.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, it sort of sounds obvious. I think to get her more involved is sort of step one there, and vice versa. I don't know how much you on the sort of product side are thinking about and spending time on what we just talked about could be considered your net customer experience, right? So the net customer experiencing your product. How much time or sort of thought cycles are you and your team maybe spending it on the product side, either talking to prospective customers, hearing how they're talking about their problems? Is that part of what you're doing already?
Yes, yes. That's what we're doing. But what I do realize is that way too often I find myself doing marketing at kind of the feature level, thinking of how something will be communicated, rolled out at feature level. And I
Yes.
know I need to step out of that and think more holistically.
Yes. Yes. That's great. Well, you already identified a key thing. This is something that I see a lot is it's so tempting for us, whether you're in product or marketing or even sales, to talk about our features, right? Because here we spend all this time as teams, right? Working with engineering, developing features. And features are hopefully informed by what we think our customers want. Sometimes we hear it's what they want, or what we think, or we're anticipating what their needs are. But it's so tempting just to go right to start talking about features. And when you see, we all see so much marketing online, right, where companies go immediately to talking about features. And that really can be dangerous and counterproductive, especially when it could be that your customer actually doesn't care about your product or your features. What they really care about is their pain, right? The pain or their need, and solving that need. And they actually, not only that, they want to have their pain or need solved in their language, meaning, are you speaking their language? And so what happens is when we go out, we sort of launch a product or a new release. Hey, version 1.2 is here, and we've just launched these features, right? Unless your features and the way you're articulating your features are so directly mapped to solving the specific pains and needs that your customers actually have, including, like we just talked about, at the sort of Maslow's hierarchy of needs level, right? It's like, are you really solving their pain? Or ultimately, is the thing that you're talking about, how does it tie to their need to kind of look good at work, right? Like if they're in a role at work and your product is supposed to sort of make them more productive in some way, is the deep motivation for that person actually to not get fired, especially in this environment right now, right? So things like that, right? Do they use other products that are competitive to your product? And how do they think about the fact that your product is going to be immediately compared to what they're maybe already using, right? And the sort of norms that they may have developed around using those other products. Are you trying to get them to rip and replace something? So things like that come from talking to your customers. And I think it's both a product thing and a marketing thing. So I would say, you and the woman you're working with, to do that kind of work back from the customer, right? Talk to your customer, both of you, right? You should both be on the calls there, spending time with them, and try to glean out their most basic, but kind of their deepest level needs. And do you hear some fear in their voice? Do you hear that they're afraid about something, or that ultimately they're worried that maybe their boss, like those things matter a lot. Ultimately, it's not just sort of the rational features. And again, just to kind of close on this question, is so much we talk about just features and we have bullet points. Well, now you can do this. Now you can do this. Now you can do this. A lot of that is going to go right into their rational brain centers, right? So your prefrontal cortex is going to process that. And we think again so often that humans will make a decision just based on, well, yeah, clearly version 1.2 of this product has these new features. Well, rationally speaking, this other product doesn't have that feature yet, so I will choose this product. No. Oftentimes, people will be very stubborn and they won't choose it because there's something else. They've developed habits, they're lazy, right? They're fearful. They want to kind of use what everybody else is using. So you've got to factor things like that into how you talk about your features. And I think this is where, kind of brand and marketing can actually help a lot, because if you're both hearing the customer, say things or reveal things that may indicate that this is the case, the way that you talk about your features, you could really map the language, even changing specific words to resonate more deeply with sort of their hierarchy of needs, right? And the real concerns or the real things that they want to do or not do, right? Or you can find ways to sort of tickle their brain, right? Their lizard brain with delight, right? You can kind of make them go, ooh, that's cool, right? So I would say integrate together, work backwards from what you hear from your customer, and make sure that the resulting talking about your features really, really ties as deeply as possible to what you think their psychology is saying. Okay?
Thanks a lot, Paul.
Sure. Thank you.
Such deep insight. Thank you.
Sorry, a bit long-winded. What's next? We just go down the list, Eleanor?
Yeah, let's refresh just to make sure we have the one with the most upvotes, but it's about what you think about Brian Chesky's vision about Airbnb wanting to have like PMs be product marketers, and what you think of this.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I don't know exactly the context around what he said, and I apologize. I should do that. Actually, I've got in my long list of podcasts a couple interviews with Brian that I want to listen to. But I think I get the crux of what he's saying, and I very, very much agree with it, actually. Whether tactically you repurpose a PM into a product marketer role, I think that's a tactical decision that has to make sense for your team and your business, right? It may or may not make sense. I think actually a really good product manager, and I've been lucky to work with some really great product people in my past, oftentimes they will be able to do the work of a product marketer, and then conversely work with some product marketers who really are ultimately they're fantastic product managers, right? Again, these are lines, these are semantic definitions we put around these people, a PM versus a product marketer, right? And so it's less about that. It's more about the sort of, I think, the meta point that he must be making, which is that it's getting closer to your customer. So a product marketer, right? If you can imagine you have an engineer or engineering here on this side, you go to product and product management, right? The classical product management, right? With, you have your PRD, and then you would have UX and some design as part of this. And you go further down closer to what you might think is marketing, and you get to product marketing, right? Product marketer is supposed to ultimately distill, kind of translate and distill all the stuff happening at the engineering and product level into these sort of salient and well-articulated expressions of what the product does, and vice versa, take inputs and requirements from the customer and translate them into the needs, right? The product marketer point is simply closer to the customer. And so I think what he's sort of saying is listen to your customers. And if you are finding that you have something of a siloed product team that is further from the customer, it may make sense to sort of shift people closer to understanding how what they're building will resonate with the customers in the market, and get a tighter and faster iteration loop. So again, I don't know if this is what he said, but what happens is when you actually spend more time on the product marketing side and you're closer to the customer, you end up actually shortening the cycle time between customer feedback and sort of what they're doing, what they want, what you're hearing them say, and the ability to iterate, right? And if you have great product marketers who are very capable product people, you can often have a very direct line, right, into what you change in the product and how fast you change it, and how to kind of stack rank and prioritize those features. Because that's often a huge thing. I mean, I think we've all, or many of us have been in the boat where you work with product teams. It's just always the classic horse trading, right? It's like, how do we stack rank the priorities? Oh my God, there's too much stuff on the plate, right? How do we sequence what's most important? And there's some necessary, like say, engineering debt you've got to buy into that takes up a bunch of cycles. We have to do this, and then there's platform stuff here, and then there's like usually like not very much time for the ability to react to the market. And so I think the shortening the cycle time and having your product team and ultimately even engineering closer to what you hear from the market and from your customer, and make sure that you're delighting them, is absolutely key. And things like short sprints, basically shipping but weekly, right, makes a big difference. Let me just cite one example. I think this is a good one for people to kind of look up. I've become kind of obsessed with this company Beehive, right? This is the newsletter company. I'm kind of a huge fan. I've become kind of obsessed with Tyler, who's the founder and CEO there. I just think they're doing such a great job of just absolutely nailing it on pretty much every vector, from shipping product, from tight feedback loop, from hearing their customers, to sort of building in public, short cycle times between releases. They ship literally weekly, and they're moving so fast and in such a customer-driven way, in such a fresh way. And the product is really fantastic. And they entered a totally crowded space that was like dominated by the MailChimps of the world and all these. I mean, it's really impressive what they built. I would say spend a little bit of time, sign up for Tyler's newsletter, and follow what they do on social, and kind of dig into their history. He's very transparent about building and kind of what they did in the early days. You will learn, I think, more from that example that will kind of give you a kick in the pants around how to think about product marketing, and marketing, than a lot of what you may sort of read online or even what I'm talking about here. So that's just one kind of tip. Okay. Hopefully I answered that question. What's next? I see
I think the
5 up
next,
folks.
yeah, from Nick.
Okay, yeah. How do you approach qualitative research about customers? How far apart? So what does it say? How far? So how far is apart? Customers say, I see from what they actually do. I see. I got it. So qualitative research, and quantitative research. I mean, research can be incredibly helpful, and actually, it's faster than ever to be able to research something. Research can give you, I think, a great macro lens around a topic. And it's important to actually, so two things. One, it's important to actually use multiple sources for your qualitative research. If you just do one set of surveys, and you're relying on kind of loaded questions, you can get extremely skewed results, and you can go far down the path. I think, to me, it's really important, if you do qualitative research, which can be helpful because you need to do that level of scale, you also have to validate that by talking to actual customers. And I think there's no way around that. People oftentimes want to hide behind research, right? They want to hide behind emailing a survey and kind of looking at mass data like that. It's a great starting point. And again, I think you can get kind of an overall macro sense, and you can actually see patterns from that, especially if you're N, right? If your sample size is large enough, you can start to get some pattern recognition there. But you still have to validate that with customers, because again, this is why the evolutionary psychology is so important. People may answer surveys and answer things in a way that because that's what they think they're supposed to say, or they believe their ego, the expression of their ego in their role as, well, I'm a director of product, I'm a director of marketing, something like that they should answer it a certain way, because they're literally forcing themselves to sort of play that persona, right? They think that, well, this is what someone of my stature and my background and what I do should say. And they'll even do things that are really counter to what they actually, at their root, subconscious, believe. And so that's why it's so important to actually talk to customers and actually, ideally, hear them talk about it. Like, listen to their voice. Is there fear in their voice? Is there something that they kind of anecdotally say, or if like, well, yeah, I wish it was this way, or oh, let's dig more on that. I think you have to kind of calibrate your research with that. And again, to me, the biggest insights and gems have come from those actually kind of long conversations with customers. And I think it's actually generally more valuable to do that with a cross section of customers and to do it over time, right? Than to rely only on qualitative research. So just to be clear there, that there is often a delta between what people say and what they do. And that's not surprising. Again, we're flawed humans, right? We might say we're going to do something, we intend to do something, but then we do something totally, totally different. Well, why is that? Well, it's because we're not rational. Our lizard brains, our animal brains are still dominating so much of what we decide to do or not do, right? Okay, let's see if we can hit a couple more. Eleanor, time check. How are we doing on time? You're on mute.
Oh, I'm on mute. I think we can do maybe two quick one. So we can end. We have like 6 minutes left.
Okay, sorry. What would be the next one with the most votes?
So it's about if you could like share a bit more details about the differences between B2B and B2C marketing.
Oh, yes, I love this one. Actually, it's a great question. So I've worked in both B2C and B2B multiple times. And one of the biggest insights that really struck me as surprising is that the line between B2C and B2B is, I think, as most of us know, increasingly blurred in recent years, right? There's been this consumerization of B2B. And as part of that, the expectations for B2B, especially in things like software, has really, really changed because people now have a reference point in their consumer life, right? That something should feel a certain way. So things like usability of products and services, the UI, how something feels, how easy it is to purchase something, all those things that used to be, that we think of as, oh, well, that's just consumer, right? In B2B, it's business, and it's supposed to be a little bit more arcane and kind of a little bit more stiff. No, so that all changed quite a bit, especially depending on your category. And yet I think what I see in teams so often is that we really, really think that people in B2B are literally like a different animal from B2C, meaning we think that literally someone in a B2B context, like that when they put their work hat on, that suddenly they make very different decisions in their business than they would make in their personal life. And that just couldn't be further from the truth. Yes, you certainly have constraints, or you may have different parameters around what you might do in your purchasing behavior, and requirements that you have in B2B versus B2C. But guess what? It's the same human. And this is another example of the semantic lines that we put between things. And especially in recent years, and especially with something like, like COVID, right? What was the line between you as a consumer and you as a worker or someone in business, right? Right? Aren't you the same person sitting there in your pajamas on your laptop, where you got one window open here and you're buying shoes, and then you've got your Amazon thing, and then you've got your work thing, and you're talking to a customer, right? Right? It's so blurred more than ever. And I think that we do B2B customers a disservice by thinking of them differently, that these are not actually flawed humans with fears and needs and tastes and animal, sort of lizard brains, right? It's the same people. And one of the biggest unlocks that I have found as a result, that I tested this multiple times, is to literally try to go after and try to reach people in the B2B context via consumer channels, right? So I did some pretty unorthodox things, right? Like, hey, let's go find people, right, where they are in their personal life on social media, right? Facebook, Instagram, etc. Why do you think that people would only somehow be resonant to something you would put forth to them to like solve their pain in a work context or make them more productive at work, something like that, right? Or a work product or solution when they're in their work hat mode, when there really is no such thing, right? More than ever, work is always on. Work, it's just like this ephemeral streams coming in and out. Slack is always on. You get a DM, you also got a text from your mom, right? Where it's all so blurred. So the notion of saying that we need to do something so different in B2B is really, really dangerous. And I think conversely, you can get a real unlock by treating those people in B2B, your customers, as real humans, as flawed humans, and using the same tactics that the same things we talked about earlier around psychology. What are their real motivations? What do they really care about? And one of the things that I found that, especially in a work context, is that there is actually a lot of fear. People oftentimes, the old saying of no one ever got fired for buying IBM, that kind of thinking is very, very real. People have a lot of fear around doing the right thing and not wanting to do the wrong thing, not wanting to look bad at work, wanting to actually make sure that they actually increase the chances that they will get promoted at work, and that they'll be favored at work, and certainly not get fired at work. Those kinds of deep sort of Maslow hierarchy level of needs where safety, trust, will I actually get fired and not be able to pay my bill, et cetera? Those things are very, very real. And I think there are ways you can use those things to give more trust. So for example, a company I worked with recently that I did some advising for, we completely refactored their messaging and how they're talking to their customer to sort of really imbue the sense of safety and trust, like making them feel like they're going to have a lot more ability and control at work, and remove all this fear, because the nature of their job, like this target ICP, their job was such that there was a lot of just built-in fear and unpredictability. And that fear of sort of things of around loss of control was so palpable for them that ultimately it wasn't that they were going to buy the software based on features that would say make them more productive. It was actually going to be the thing that made them feel like they could take back some control, meaning they could lessen the fear of them looking like they're not doing their job. And again, massive, massive game changer. I mean, it really, 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 really helped. And so things like that, I think, are very powerful. And I would leverage those kind of what you might think of as, formerly B2C tactics in your B2B work. Okay, let's pause there so we can just do one more. Eleanor, one more question.
I have to jump. I have a hard stop at
Okay.
3
And we can wrap
Eastern
it up.
time.
Look,
Yes.
there's a lot more questions. Feel free. My email's on the screen. Feel free to email me. I love helping and mentoring, this is fun stuff for me. Reach out anytime. Connect on LinkedIn. Hopefully this is the first of many conversations. I'm happy to do more of these. Also, if you'd like me to create a course on Reforge, I'm happy to tackle any one of these topics we talked about, or others, and do a course as well. And that's something I've thought about. So just let me know how it can be helpful. And thanks for your time. Sorry for the cat pictures at the beginning, but I hope you enjoyed it. Life is short.
Thank you so much, Paul. It was
Thanks,
a great
everyone.
event. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.